It's so good to have you back here with us on the Future Female Forward stage. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Smriti Irani. Can I tell them the backstory?
Please do.
So this is what was going on in Davos. It was crunch time. We were literally at the end of the World Economic Forum's annual meeting, and we were supposed to do an interview together. And she said, after the interview, take your mic off. I need to tell you something. And I was like, okay. And we go into a room, and she's like, okay, everybody clear out, shut the door. And I'm like, okay, what is going on over here? And she said, you know, we're working on something really big. I can't tell you what it is, but hopefully in the next few hours we should know whether we're going to be able to make that announcement or not. And I was like excited, so wondering what is going to come off of this. And cut to the India reception, which is what the Confederation of Indian Industry organizes in Davos at the World Economic Forum, and we have many of the CII folks here with us, and they were part of this as well. And she walks in, and you held my hand, and she just looked at me and she said, it's done. And I was like, okay, what's done? And finally we see her go up on stage and make the announcement that India has had a massive breakthrough in Davos. It has actually put together a conglomeration of corporates across not just domestic, not just Indian companies, but global companies, global organizations, and the World Economic Forum coming together for the cause of gender parity, for the cause of gender empowerment, to forge a global alliance for good. So congratulations, Smriti Irani, on getting that done. What was that moment like for you?
I think it's a moment for celebration for the gender cause in India. We are the first nation in the world, and I may say so this, knowing the journey that we have all undertaken, which has made a financial case for emancipation. A decade ago, when we spoke about the rights of women and parity and equity, it was looked from the lens of a hand-me-down, as though women are waiting for a dole or waiting to be rescued. The fact that we have made a financial case from a female perspective, that we are shoulder to shoulder with any other gender contributing not only for national good but also global good, is a case India made. Case in point, domestically, Mudra Yojana was not a gendered financial instrument. When the Prime Minister started Jan Dhan Yojana, we had close to 240 million women who opened their bank accounts for the first time. But if you hear the Honorable President's speech to both Houses of Parliament, you recognize that now 30 crore mudra loans were taken only by women in this country, which is a huge volume. What is a cause for great joy and celebration is that the NPA for such loans with regards to women is around 2%. Which is a better fiscally disciplined way of engaging with financial institutions as compared to many corporates or many big financial institutions. If I look at it from an international point of view, when the COVID challenge came before us, globally supply chains were shutting down. Globally there was huge friction with regards to supplies that were already available to combat COVID. And at that time, when we were, as a nation, never in a position to produce PPE suits, we came together, the industry and government alike. We created machinery and we regenerated raw material so that we could make PPE suits. Now, I still remember that in the month of March, when there was a lockdown, companies and government came together. There were 0 companies for PPE suits manufacturing in our country. In the next 3 months, which is by May, we had 1,100 companies. By June, we became the second largest exporters in the world. But what has been unsaid till now is that 80% of the workforce that turned up to make that PPE suit during the pandemic, that too during the first cycle when everybody was wishing it away, and not stepping out of their homes, 80% of the workforce was female.
Yeah.
So when the going got tough, the tough got going.
The women got going.
The women got going. And if I look at the COVID experience again, 6 million frontline workers are women. So you had 2.5 million Anganwadi workers and Asha workers who went door to door taking supplies, pharmaceutical supplies, testing kits. They went to every family in need and they helped provide medical services to them. These 6 million women who are the frontline workers, they went out when there was genuinely death staring at them in the face. So we've made a domestic and international case with regards to what women can deliver, not only on financial instruments, not only on financial opportunities, but especially when there is a challenge at hand. And I think that it is for the first time in the history of the World Economic Forum that the World Economic Forum came to the India stage to say, can we be your network partner? So it's only the Indian woman who could drag the World Economic Forum to an Indian stage and make them commit. What is fascinating also is that we worked on this alliance for a mere 72 hours. The perception about our country today, not only about our strength as a nation, but also people, our talent pool, our capacity to deliver on promises, is such that in 72 hours, domestically and internationally, we had a commitment from 10,000 companies, which is unheard of. So what we managed to create, yes, is an alliance not for ourselves, but for global good. And I think it's a reflection of what India promised in its G20 presidency. When the Prime Minister says we are one world and one future, well, if the future is female, it's definitely forward, and it's definitely a future that comes together to create alliances for global good, and not only for women. So I think even the wordings of the alliance is very reflective of what women are capable of, especially in India. That when we came together not only for each other, but we came together for everybody in the world.
You know, and she was joking about this. She said, I have the most expensive handshake because whoever she was meeting in Davos, she was getting them to sign up for the Global Alliance. And as she pointed out, 10,000 corporations have come on board for the alliance. Now, what are the next steps? What is it that we should expect from here on, now that the alliance is set?
I think that there are 3 elements to the alliance which need reflection. One is, what are the basics on which people came together on? Education, health for women is of paramount importance. We at the World Economic Forum spoke and heard many conversations about a fractured world, a fragmented ecosystem across the world. But we are the one country that can become the democratic glue that brings together a fractured world. And when nations at large spoke about the capital crunch, what is the first element which becomes a victim to such capital crunch? The interests of women. And that is why when companies said that they will join this alliance, they said so because we said we would like to prioritize issues of education and health for women. So what are the best technologies that we as a nation can offer for global good? For instance, again taking away from the COVID chapter and how India responded to the COVID chapter, we had a digital platform like CoWIN, which we have implemented for the larger use of our citizenry, but we also shared it with many nations. So there are many such digital platforms and digital associations that now we offer to the world on behalf of the alliance. For instance, in the G20 meetings, we've had a lot of interest shown in India's Poshan Tracker, where the service delivery mechanism for beneficiaries with regards to nutrition and vaccination and childcare and early childhood education and benefits that can go to pregnant and lactating mothers is something that I think sparked an interest in every country that had a one-on-one conversation with the government of India. So we will now offer these digital solutions to everybody. The second aspect on which the alliance found a lot of resonance with many individual organizations, apart from corporations, is the Global Gender Gap Report. Now, many of the Global South challenges are divorced from the realities of the report. We understand that when you look at the political ecosystem in countries such as ours, where women are not only politically established in parliament or in legislative assemblies, but also are equally productive in their contribution at the grassroots, like our panchayats, that finds no recognition. Now, many people will presume that a global gender gap report is just meant for research and may not have an impact on the economies of a nation. But we know that globally now, when international investors look at a country, they also factor in whether we are fair to the gender quotient in our country. So have we ever recognized that a global gender gap index report actually is used as an instrument to not only shame, but also ensure that investors shy away from our country? So those are the conversations that happen in subdued voices in the Global South and in the African Union. It is the intention of the alliance to ensure that if there is a parameter to judge how gender justice is implemented in a country, let it be done not from a prism of shame, but from an effort to empower. So I think those two huge steps are to be undertaken under this alliance. And I also feel that India has committed itself with regards to gender during the G20 presidency. We are the first country in this world, and I'm very proud of that, which mainstreamed the female agenda at the G20. Before India's presidency, gender was an issue which was discussed on the sidelines, left to civil society, and there was just a paper among civil society members on gender. Prime Minister Modi is to be complimented that he made it a part of the main agenda, and now G20 will have a working group for women and young girls, and we are hoping that the Global Alliance will then service the needs not only of the G20 working group, but also B20, W20 and Empower. So I'm hopeful that the alliance, in collaboration specifically in India with the Confederation of Indian Industries, will find that position, and I'm hopeful that as a part of that alliance, Shireen, the Future Female Forward agenda will find a global resonance in that alliance and as a part of our collaborations with nations at large.
Well, that is certainly something that we would hope for. That is certainly something that we intend to work towards. We do want to make this and take this mainstream and make this much more a part of the global conversations as well. You talked about the Global Gender Report, and I know that there have been changes that have been made, and changes that were made on account of your pretty vociferous sort of back and forth with the World Economic Forum on the way that they look at political empowerment, and that was factored in, and which is why we've actually jumped significant number of places.
I've also tried to push the economic agenda, and which part of the economic agenda was not receiving recognition. Today, the Prime Minister speaks about 10 crore Lakpati Didis is his new, I think, aim. He has declared that 3 crore women will be made Lakpatis. Now, that is unimaginable in the self-help group history that our country has seen. But if you look at it from an economic lens, these are 100 million women who have an economic activity worth $37 to $38 billion every year in the grassroots economy of our country. They do not get recognized for their fiscal discipline. And when I say fiscal discipline, it's because they take credit from banks and financial institutions, service those loans and pay them back. Again, NPA in those institutions for self-help groups, if you see the numbers, oscillate between 2.5% to 3%. Now, in the past 10 years, these self-help groups have received over 8.2 lakh crore rupees from the government of India, apart from the credit that they also take from banks, which means that there's a volume of transaction that they do, there's a volume of economic activity that they do, but it does not globally get recognized as one of the great changes that have happened in our economy. And I think if you start computing India's female strength politically at the grassroots in the panchayat, we have 1.5 million women who are elected to office in our villages that go unaccounted for. And these 100 million women who only do work in self-help groups across the country, they are not accounted for in the Global Gender Gap Report. So can you imagine if just this strength of Indian women starts getting computed, how much better will we do on an indice? So I as an Indian, and I'm not speaking as a minister, as an Indian, I don't mind competing. I don't mind somebody calling out when we have a challenge. What I do mind is when 100 million women make an effort and they don't find a voice. So that is an injustice that we reflected and we spoke to the World Economic Forum about. I know that it is a forum where there are many areas of platitudes, there are many statements given, but I believe in getting a written confirmation, and I'm happy that we got it from the World Economic Forum for India. So not only politically, but even financially, the computation now will be done. If not done, and if I ever have an opportunity to land up at that door again and they don't hear me knocking, I'm sure to break it down.
I am quite certain of that. I am quite certain of that. But Smriti Irani, you know, and again, it was pretty amazing to watch her in action, because there she was sort of doing all of these conversations, bilateral meetings. There were tons of sort of panel discussions and so on and so forth. And in the middle of all of this, we're standing, it's minus 14 degrees, and she's also Instagramming, and she's like, what's the hashtag for Davos 2024? And I was like, you're actually Instagramming right now? And she was pretty much doing it all herself. So I want to understand from you, what is the one piece of advice that you have got through the course of your career, while you were growing up, etc., that's made you who you are today? And what is the one piece of advice that you've given your daughter, for instance?
I got an advice never to listen to advice. Because life brings with you, to you, opportunities and challenges. No matter who you listen to, it's what you end up doing is a consequence that you bear individually. So I would rather bear the consequence of my own action than to somebody's advice. Insofar as my daughter goes, no advice was given by me to her. I only think that the only thing that I gave her was an assurance that as a human being, you're bound to fail. As a human being, you're bound to make a mistake. Doesn't matter what your gender is. But if you make a mistake, I'm always available to hear you out and not judge you. If you fail, I'm always there to love you unconditionally. And if you succeed, I'm happy to see you shine under the spotlight without me anywhere near you. So I think that that is good enough for a daughter or a son. And I also feel that the stories that you say, Shireen, that are told on this platform are also stories that we need to show our daughters. Today you had somebody who went to a firefighting college, who was inspired by a woman who wants to fly for the Air Force. Now, obviously, somebody heard somebody's story and got inspired. So I think if there is something that we can do for our daughters, is to ensure that these stories are told, these stories are heard, and that is how you pay it forward for the future female forward.
Smriti Irani, what an absolute pleasure it is to have you here. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you
for paying it forward and for joining us here on this stage. Once again, we truly appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause.